Princess Charlotte tried to hide beneath Kate's skirt on her first day, looking nervous. While dropping Charlotte off at school, her teacher talked to Princess Catherine unexpectedly. It got viral rapidly. It was a Thursday morning in early March. Princess Catherine rose early that day. With the palace calm, she went to the kitchen to make her morning tea. She was dressed and had her hair down by 6. Sky was just brightening outside. It seemed like a peaceful day. She had no idea what was coming. That morning, she would drop off the kids at school before meeting with her early years development team. Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, and Prince George attended Thomas's Battersea, a short drive from Kensington Palace. They sought to keep school running normally despite the occasional cameras near the palace gates. Catherine helped all 3 kids get ready by 7:15, checking Charlotte's reading record, keeping Louis's sweater clean and George's lunchbox in mind. Everyone wore Navy school uniforms. Charlotte had her hair neatly pulled back with blue ribbon. The children left after saying farewell to Prince William, who was sipping tea at the door. At 7:30, they left. Catherine drove with guards close behind. In the back car, Charlotte silently read her spelling words. Catherine listened. When necessary, gently correct her. "Mommy, will Miss Hall appreciate my reading today?" Charlotte inquired quietly. "Yes, dear, you practiced well." Princess Catherine grinned. They reached Thomas's Battersea before 8. This morning was sunny despite the cool breeze. After parking near the school entrance, Catherine took Charlotte's purse and held her hand as they entered. The head teacher said in May that the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's decision to have Princess Charlotte join Prince George is wonderful. Many parents arrived. Like any parent, Catherine welcomed them enthusiastically. Charlotte's Year 3 teacher, Miss Hall, kept flashcards on the board. Slim in her late 30s, she had shoulder-length brown hair and black-rimmed glasses. She smiled forcefully when she turned. "Good morning, Miss Hall." Princess Catherine greeted nicely. "Morning, Princess Charlotte." "Morning, Your Royal Highness," Miss Hall replied, barely looking up. Charlotte placed her bag in her cubby hole and stood beside her mother. Just then, Miss Hall noticed something unusual and gently called Charlotte's attention to it. She sighed and said, "Charlotte, your shirt isn't tucked in properly today. I hope you're not becoming lazy." "And Your Royal Highness," she turned towards Princess Catherine. "Perhaps you could ensure her uniform is correct before leaving home." Catherine was taken aback. Other students were entering with their parents and heard the comment. There was a short silence. Princess Catherine bent down to adjust Charlotte's shirt, speaking softly to her so she wouldn't feel embarrassed. "It's all right, love. Stand tall." But Miss Hall wasn't done. She added, "Some parents are too busy thinking about their public image and forget the basics, like teaching their children how to dress properly." Catherine paused. Anger rose within her, but her face remained calm. Other parents pretended to look away, but it was clear they felt uncomfortable. Before Princess Catherine could respond, Charlotte's friend Olivia walked in and shouted, "Hi, Charlotte." Breaking the tension, Charlotte smiled, her confidence returning. Catherine stood up straight, looked at Miss Hall and said, quietly, "Thank you for your feedback. I'll keep that in mind." Her tone was polite, but firm. She kissed Charlotte's forehead, whispered, "Have a good day, my darling," and turned to leave. Walking down the hallway, her heart felt heavy. She had never been spoken to like that by a teacher, especially not in front of her child. But she decided not to react rashly. Sitting in her car for a moment before driving off, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she called her secretary to confirm her meeting schedule. "Ma'am, your meeting with the early years team is at 10 in Kensington Palace. Then there's a call with the National Portrait Gallery around noon," her secretary replied. "Thank you. We'll return soon." Catherine entered her office in the palace before 9 and sat by the window, contemplating. Charlotte might be humiliated or think she did anything wrong, she feared. William called from Windsor minutes later. "Is everything okay?" he inquired. "Yes, something happened at school drop-off," she said, explaining Miss Hall's words. It was quiet. William said, "That's unacceptable. Want me to call the headmaster?" "No," Catherine insisted. "I'll manage." Catherine attended her meeting later. She highlighted the May Early Years Conference, children's mental health programs, and community visit dates. Miss Hall's remarks haunted her despite work. The meeting finished about midday. Catherine's phone buzzed while she perused briefing materials before her lunchtime call. Charlotte's teaching assistant sent it. "Royal Highness, good morning. Charlotte is doing well today." Classmate read aloud confidently. "Regards, Mrs. Peters." Catherine smiled slightly at the message. Charlotte didn't seem affected, but Catherine realized she had to address it. Teachers. It was possible to correct children without humiliating them or their parents. Her call with the National Portrait Gallery team covered upcoming exhibitions and patronage programs. Despite replaying Ms. Hall's comments and her thoughts, she kept her voice cool. Catherine watched the gardens from the window after the call. She understood she needed to talk to the headmaster, not cause trouble, but to prevent any child, royal or not, from being shamed again. She grabbed her phone to contact Thomas's Battersea. Before she called, her secretary softly knocked to say lunch was ready. As she ate at her desk, she contemplated how to approach the matter gracefully, but she later changed her mind. Princess Catherine delayed calling the headmaster after lunch. First, she didn't want the public to misinterpret the issue or tarnish the institution, which was highly regarded. She also needed time to carefully decide how to voice her concerns. She entered the small reading room beside her office at 2 in the afternoon with her notes for the early years speech the following week. Her thoughts kept returning to Charlotte. She heard her phone buzz at 3. Her calendar reminded Charlotte of her pickup time. Closed her notebook, she rose up and collected her beige coat and bags. She wanted to pick up Charlotte instead of sending the security crew that day. She wanted her kid to see her. She arrived at Thomas's Battersea to find parents waiting at the gates. Catherine left her car, buttoned her coat tighter against the cold wind, and went to the Year 3 pickup area. Some parents nodded politely, while others mumbled. Charlotte soon arrived with her reading folder. Her face lit up when she saw her mother. "Mommy." She rushed forward, calling. Catherine kneeled and hugged her. "How was your day, love?" Her request was gentle. Charlotte paused. "Miss Hall stated I read poorly in class." Catherine lowered her smile but kept her tone warm. "Your effort matters, dear. Some days are harder than others, and that's okay." As they walked to the car, Charlotte talked about her spelling quiz and a game of netball. She played with Olivia during break. Catherine listened closely, glad to hear her daughter's voice lifting again. Once inside the car, she helped Charlotte with her seatbelt, then paused beside her before the driver pulled away. She knew Charlotte needed encouragement now more than ever. "Darling," she began softly, "about what Miss Hall said this morning, you did nothing wrong. You looked beautiful and smart, just like every day." Charlotte looked at her mother and nodded, but Catherine could tell she was still thinking about it. "Mummy, did I embarrass you?" Catherine shook her head firmly. "Never. You could never embarrass me. Sometimes adults say things they shouldn't. That's not your fault." Charlotte smiled faintly, then looked out the window as the car drove through the streets of London. Back to Kensington Palace. They arrived home just before 4. Not long after settling in, George and Louis changed out of their uniforms and headed to the palace gardens to play football with William. Charlotte quickly swapped into her jeans and sweater and ran outside to join them. Catherine stood by the window watching them for a while. After lunch, Catherine returned to her study and picked up her phone. She called Thomas's Battersea, and the receptionist connected her to the headmaster, Mr. Jonathan. She spoke clearly and calmly, explaining what had happened that morning with Miss Hall. Though she wasn't angry, her voice showed she meant every word. She didn't want to cause trouble, but she believed it was wrong for any teacher to embarrass a child, especially in front of others. Mr. Jonathan listened carefully. He understood how serious it was and promised to handle it. He said he would speak to Miss Hall right away. Catherine thanked him and ended the call. Afterwards, she felt a bit relieved. She knew she had done the right thing. She didn't raise her voice or cause a scene, but she had stood up for Charlotte in the right way. Later that evening, after dinner, Catherine sat with the children in the living room helping George with his history homework. William was reading a storybook to Louis on the other sofa. Charlotte sat beside her mother reading her library book quietly. At one point, Charlotte looked up and asked softly, "Mummy, do you think Miss Hall doesn't like me?" Catherine put her arm around her daughter. "I think Miss Hall had a bad morning and she didn't handle it well. That doesn't mean she doesn't like you. But if she ever says something unkind again, tell me." "All right." Charlotte nodded and returned to her book, reassured by her mother's words. When William asked how things went with the headmaster, Catherine said he was kind and understanding. Mr. Jonathan had said sorry and promised to talk to Miss Hall about what happened. William felt better knowing the school was taking it seriously. He didn't like anyone making their children feel bad, especially at school. Catherine was glad he supported her. They sat quietly for a moment, thinking about the day. Both of them knew how important it was to protect their children and make sure they were treated with care and respect. Catherine nodded, but deep inside she hoped Miss Hall would reflect and adjust her attitude. She believed teachers had the power to build or break children's confidence, and Charlotte deserved kindness. The next morning was Friday. Catherine woke up early again, prepared breakfast, and got the children ready for school. That day, Charlotte seemed her cheerful self, humming softly as she tied her shoelaces. As they arrived at the school gate, Miss Hall caught sight of them from a distance and quickly turned away, pretending to be busy with papers in her hand. Another teacher, Miss Green, walked up with a warm smile to welcome the children. She greeted Charlotte and Louis kindly. then turned to Catherine with a respectful nod. After a brief exchange, Miss Green excused herself and quietly made a phone call to the headmaster's office. A few moments later, Mr. Jonathan stepped outside to meet Princess Catherine. He greeted her politely and, with a sincere tone, once again apologized for Miss Hall's comment the day before. He assured her that the matter was being handled and that it would not happen again, having been lucky enough to meet some of our country's amazing charities and organizations. Catherine thanked him calmly and said she understood. She didn't want trouble, only kindness and fairness for her children. With that, she gave George, Charlotte, and Louis a quick hug, watched them walk into the building, and then returned to her car. As Catherine drove home that morning, she couldn't understand why Miss Hall had been so rude. At first, she had made excuses, thinking Miss Hall was just having a bad day. But now, with it happening again, it felt deliberate and troubling. Still, Catherine tried not to worry too much. After all, the headmaster had promised to speak to Miss Hall personally and handled the situation firmly. She hoped that would be the end of it, but she was wrong. The incident happened once more, and how Catherine reacted left everyone in surprise. Although the headmaster had promised to talk to Miss Hall, he hadn't done it yet. He was planning to speak to her at the next staff meeting, thinking there was still time. But he had no idea things would get worse so quickly. At school, Miss Hall had been acting differently. One of the teachers who was close to her noticed something was off. She asked her if everything was okay, but Miss Hall just brushed it off and didn't explain what it is exactly, and how we can support not only ourselves, but each other as well. That afternoon, Princess Catherine came to pick up her children from school like she always did. As she walked towards the gate, she ran into Miss Hall. Charlotte was right beside her. Without even greeting them properly, Miss Hall looked straight at Catherine and said in a cold tone, "You might want to work more on Charlotte's class attitude. She seems distracted." Catherine stopped. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Calm but firm, she said, "Excuse me. You don't talk to kids that way. If you're going through something, speak to someone. Don't take it out on them." Miss Hall froze. She didn't expect Catherine to respond like that. She didn't say a word. At that moment, another parent who had overheard everything stepped forward and said, "I think you owe her an apology." But Miss Hall didn't respond. Instead, she turned around and walked away quickly. One of the teachers nearby saw it all happen and immediately went to inform the headmaster. Not long after, the headmaster, Jonathan, called Miss Hall into his office. "Miss Hall," he said seriously, "I've received reports about your behavior. This is not acceptable. Is there something you're not telling us?" Miss Hall stayed quiet for a moment, then sighed and said, "I'm sorry. Things have been really tough at home. I've been under a lot of pressure, but I didn't mean to let it affect my work." The headmaster's tone softened. "I understand, but it's important you don't carry that stress into the classroom. Maybe you need a few days off to rest and take care of yourself." Miss Hall nodded slowly. "Yes, I think that would help." They agreed she would take 2 days off to clear her head and get support if needed. That same afternoon, Mr. Jonathan called Princess Catherine to explain. He apologized for the incident again and assured her that Miss Hall had been spoken to and wouldn't be returning for a few days. Catherine listened quietly. Then she asked, "Is she fine? Does she need help?" The headmaster explained everything that Miss Hall had shared. Catherine was quiet for a moment, then said, "If there's anything I can do or if she wants to talk, I'd be happy to speak with her." It was clear Catherine wasn't just upset about how her daughter was treated. She was also concerned about what was really going on behind the scenes. Miss Hall later took a few days off work. During that time, Catherine continued her usual routine, dropping the children off at school each morning. Things seemed calm, and Charlotte appeared more relaxed. By the following Monday, Ms. Hall returned to work. That morning, Charlotte was her cheerful self again, humming softly as she tied her shoelaces. Catherine smiled, relieved to see her daughter in good spirits. But something unexpected happened when they arrived at Thomas's Battersea. Miss Hall stood at the door, greeting students as they came in. As soon as she saw Catherine and Charlotte approaching, she straightened her posture and stepped forward. "Good morning, Princess Charlotte." "Good morning, Your Royal Highness," she said, her tone noticeably softer and more sincere than before. "Good morning, Miss Hall," Catherine replied politely. Hall knelt slightly to face Charlotte. "Charlotte, I wanted to say sorry for how I spoke to you last week. I shouldn't have said those things in front of your classmates. You look smart and you read beautifully." Charlotte smiled shyly. "Thank you, Miss Hall." Miss Hall then turned to Catherine. "Ma'am, I also want to apologize to you. I wasn't myself and I acted poorly. I'm truly sorry." "Thank you," Catherine replied gently. "I appreciate your honesty," but Catherine didn't stop there. She looked at Miss Hall and said, "Do you need any kind of help?" There was a brief pause before Miss Hall nodded slowly. I think I do. I've just been overwhelmed. Catherine reached into her bag and handed her a small card. It's so weird when they get bigger to think that they were that tiny. This is my direct contact. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Later that week, true to her word, Catherine connected Ms. Hall with one of the organizations she and Prince William support, an initiative focused on mental health and emotional well-being. The group offers counseling, support networks, and resources for those dealing with stress or anxiety. Ms. Hall began attending weekly sessions through the program, gradually regaining her clarity. Ms. Hall later reached out to Catherine to thank her for her kindness and support. That same week, Catherine was in her study reading briefing papers for her upcoming charity visits to Birmingham. Charlotte quietly walked in holding a folded note. It was a thank you letter she had written herself, decorated with pink hearts to show appreciation to Miss Hall for helping her with reading. Catherine smiled warmly after reading it, touched by her daughter's thoughtfulness. By Monday morning, Charlotte was up early and cheerful. At breakfast, she carefully packed 6 chocolate muffins into a small pink box, tying it with a silver ribbon. She placed the thank you note gently on top. Later that morning, they left the palace as usual. When they arrived at Thomas's Battersea, Charlotte held the muffin box tightly as Catherine walked her to class. Miss Hall was by the door speaking with another teacher. When she saw Charlotte, she greeted her with a warm smile. Charlotte quietly handed her the box, explaining it was for her and the class. Miss Hall looked surprised and touched. She thanked Charlotte sincerely before the little girl walked into her classroom. Turning to Catherine, Miss Hall clutched the box to her chest and said Charlotte was truly a kind child. Catherine nodded with a soft smile, grateful for the moment. As she walked back to the car, felt a deep sense of pride. Her daughter was growing up kind, thoughtful, and grounded, just as she had always hoped. Do you think Princess Catherine showed grace by choosing not to react harshly to Miss Hall? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.